When you combine WordPress and advanced custom fields together, you have a fantastic platform for building great websites. The limit is basically your imagination. In today's video, I'm going to show you how we can create a website that lists properties. I'm going to show you the entire process of using Elementor Pro, custom post types, advanced custom fields, and a few more plugins to get a little bit more creative with what you do. So let's just jump into WordPress and start building. Now throughout this video, I'm assuming a certain level of knowledge because this is not a beginner's tutorial, this is more intermediate level. So if you're not comfortable working with WordPress, installing it, adding plugins and so on, I'd recommend taking a look at some videos on that, which we've got covered on the channel that'll get you up to speed. This is more intermediate level, and with that, there comes a certain level of knowledge you need. With that out of the way, let's take a look at what we're going to create. This is a property listing section, so this is an actual property we're going to look at. Now all of this is dynamically generated and created through advanced custom fields and the Elementor theme builder and various other tools. So we're going to go through and create something very similar to this. I'm going to show you the entire process. If we come back out, we've got the properties for sale, for example. We have an overview of the different properties which can be filtered out so we can see exactly what type of property we're looking at. And we're also going to have another property page where we're going to create our own custom loop, which again, I'm going to show you how to do. Now, while this focuses on properties, you could use this for anything. Used vehicles, business listings, and so on. The techniques that we're going to cover in this video will take you through and get you up to speed with using those in whatever method you want. So without further ado, let's take a look at the plugins we've got installed and how we start building things. So at this point, we've got Advanced Custom Fields Pro. We have to have the Pro version for just part of the features in this. That is for the ability to use the gallery option. If you don't want to use a gallery, you can bypass this and you can use the free version. However, I would say it's worth supporting because the license fee is so incredibly cheap and you can use that for as many sites as you want. I think it's worth supporting such a great plugin. Next up, we've got the classic editor because I don't really want to work with Gutenberg, but because we're using Elementor and Elementor Pro, you could just leave the Gutenberg editor if you want. I just tend to install that as standard. Then we've got the custom post type UI. Now this is another free plugin that works brilliantly with advanced custom fields. It allows us to create our own custom post types, which we can then create custom fields inside of. Again, totally free and really worth installing when you're working with ACF. Next up, we have Ele Custom Skin, which is for Elementor, and it allows us to create custom loops. So as part of this, we're going to set up a custom loop. We're then going to create a custom page which will list our properties on there, and we'll then have full control over that. This then means that we don't have to rely upon the built-in Elementor Pro way of listing out the different post types. So it gives us more flexibility. Now, if you wonder about the Windows compatibility fix, I'm using this setup on a local server. In other words, I'm using it on my own computer. Part of that is you get some weird glitches when you try to upload or update various plugins because the file names are too long. So don't worry about that. That's just for my setup. So now that we've got the plugins out the way, just one final thing I want to say. I'm currently using the Hello theme, which is basically a completely blank theme. And I've set up a custom header and a custom footer, just simply using some of the predefined templates that we have as part of Elementor Pro. So now that we've got our development environment set up, we're now ready to start creating our custom content. So the first thing we need to do is create our custom post type. Now, if you're not sure what a custom post type is, just think of your posts and your pages. They're different post types. Well, we can now create our own custom versions. In this example, we're going to create a custom post type called properties. So we jump into the CPT UI, which is custom post type UI. Now, don't be daunted by this. It may look complex to start off with, but the reality is we realistically only need to set some very basic options up to start working with this. So what we're going to do is we're going to say add edit post types. So we're going to click on there. We're going to come in and create our first post type. Now, as I say, you can see there's a lot of options in here. And like I say, at first glance, you may think I have no idea what to do, but let me take you through it. So the first thing we have is the post type slug. Now, if you're not sure what I'm talking about, a slug is basically just what we use to identify our custom post type. So because this is about properties, we're going to use the post slug of property. Now you can name this anything you want. So for example, you may be using cars or vehicles, then you could drop that in there and that'd be perfectly fine. Just bear in mind, these have to be unique. So if you created another custom post type, you couldn't use property a second time. You'd have to have something unique so we don't get WordPress confused. Now with the slug done, we can move on to the next two, which are the plural and singular labels. Now these are just basically the plural version of the word that you're using for the slug and the single version. So in this example, we've got properties being the plural, and property being the singular. Now you'll notice that at the basic settings we have the little red asterisk. That's telling us that we have to put information into these three boxes. However, you'll see as we scroll down for additional labels, we don't have that. So these are purely optional if you want to expand upon and make easier exactly how the admin interface of WordPress is working with your custom post type. So you may want to drop in a post type description to give some information to the end user what to do. You also have the option for menu name, all items, add new, and so on. So we can customize these, or we can let it use the default values. We'll leave default on all of those, and we'll scroll right the way down. And like I said, you can leave all of these as they are. Next up, we're going to come to settings, and this is where we are going to change some basic parameters just to make sure this works the way that we want it to. So the first thing we want to do in this section is come down, and we're going to say we want this to be hierarchical. We're going to set that to be true, so we can have a structure in there, so we can group things by flats and houses and so on. Just makes it easier to organize all these together, and you can consider this to be exactly the same as the post categories that you use with just using WordPress as a normal blog. We're also going to say we want this to have an archive. We'll say true on there. So that's the only things we want to change. We're going to leave those as they are. Everything else is fine. We're going to scroll right the way down until we come down to this final section where it says supports, and you can see we can go through and choose the various different features inside our new post type that will be supported. We can also set these up later on in advanced custom fields. So I'm going to leave those as they are because by default I do want to have the title, the editor, so we can put the content or the description of our property in there, and also the featured image. But we're going to leave everything else as is. And before we close out this section, if we want to, we can specify where this is positioned inside the menu structure, and also we can choose a menu icon. So you can see we've got full URL or icon or dash icon class. So if we wanted to, we could drop some information in there and we'd have custom icons down the left hand side. Now if you're wondering what dash icons are, if we jump over to the website, this is dash icons, and you can see all you need to do is just do a search for dash icons and it'll bring you up to this section on Google. So once we've done that, we can come through and we can find out exactly what we want. So this house looks like a pretty good example because we're dealing with properties. We can click on that and that'll show us that icon. And what we can do now is we can choose to copy the CSS, the HTML, or the glyph. We could obviously search for an item if we wanted to, instead of going through and actually scrolling through and finding what we want. However, we've got what we need. So I'm going to click on copy HTML. That'll pull up and show us the span class that's going to be used for this. So all we need to do is simply copy that. So we can right click, choose copy. Jump back over now into our dashboard of WordPress under our menu icon section in custom post type CPT UI. We can click in there, drop that in, and that'll now create that dash icon for us. So now we pasted that in, we just need to get rid of the bits that we don't need. So we get rid of everything other than the actual name of the icon that we want. Now what we're going to do is come down and say save our post type. And you can see now, if we take a look on the left hand side, we've got a new properties entry, and you can see it's put the icon that we've used in there. So there's the basics. We've created the ability to create a custom post type, and we can also add new ones in there. However, we want to categorize these, so we need to come in and choose the option to create some custom taxonomies. To do that, again, we use CPT UI. This time we come down to say add edit taxonomies. So we're going to click on there. And you can see this brings us into a different type of entry area. We can come in now and we can set up the values that we need for our custom taxonomy. Now, if you're unsure what a taxonomy is, it is basically a way WordPress uses to group items together. So in our example today, we're going to be grouping things together by the property type. For example, we've got things like houses, flats, apartments, and so on. So this allows us to create that grouping. So the first thing we're going to come in and say taxonomy slug. We're going to put in there property type. Now you'll see that I've put a underscore or a dash, whichever way you want to use it, in between the two separate elements or the two separate words in our taxonomy slug. It's always good to get into the habit of using underscores or dashes, the minus sign for example, to separate your words but join them together. It just stops having any confusion with WordPress. So again, we've got the plural labels. We're going to say property types, the singular label, property type, and what post type do we want to attach it to? Now you can see we've got the posts for WordPress, as it says WP core, pages, media, my templates, which is part of Elementor. We also have properties. Now properties is the custom post type that we've just created, and we want to link this property type to the properties. So we just select that and we can see we've set everything up. Again, if we scroll down, you can see we've got additional labels, things in there we can go through and set up. We've also got the settings option. We're going to set the hierarchical again to be true. And if you want to go through and choose anything else on here, you can do. We're going to leave those as they are for now. I'm going to scroll back up. I'm going to say add taxonomy. That's created our custom taxonomy. And if we come over now to our properties entry, you can see we've got a new option there, which is property types. So we've set the basics up. We've got the ability to add properties. We've also got the ability to create custom taxonomies, in this example, property types, to group all of our properties together. So the next thing we need to do is go in and just create a property type so we can see how that works before we start adding properties in. So let's click on property type. What we're going to do is we're going to set up a couple of property taxonomies in here. So we're going to say we'll have a flat, and we'll say add new. We'll say we're going to have an apartment, and again add new. And finally we're going to say a house and add new. So we've created 3 different taxonomies for our properties. Now if we go and take a look at adding new properties in, so we say add new, we've got a very, very basic setup. We've got the property name, the property details, our new property type, which is our taxonomy, and the featured image, but we've got nothing else. Reason being, we haven't created our custom fields yet. So the next stage is to go and create those custom fields, and then we can assign it to our new custom post type of property. Now to do that, we simply come over to the custom fields entry in the left hand side. We're going to come into field groups, or we can choose add new. So we'll choose add new, and you can see this brings us now into the ACF editor. Now again, don't be daunted by this. Once you see how easy it is to start working with, it'll take all the fear you may have out of this, thinking it's an incredibly complicated system to work with. It does give you a ton of scope to get more advanced. What we're going to cover today is really about the basics of using this. So the first thing we've got is the name that we want to give this. Now because we're dealing with properties, it makes sense to call this property, because this is only going to apply to a single property. It's a custom field set for an individual property. Okay, so once we've done that, we can now go through and choose what fields we want to add in. And you can add as many and as very different kinds of fields as you want in here. We're going to keep it to about 8. If you want to add more in, you obviously can, as many as you want. So the first thing we're going to do is say add new field. The first thing we're going to do is add a location in. So we're going to say location, and then we're going to come down to the field name, and that will automatically populate based upon the field label that we give it. If you want to change that, you can do. You can set it to anything you want. Next up, we've got the field type. Now the field type, when it comes to ACF, is the type of information you're going to insert into this custom field. So it ranges from things like text and text areas through to numbers, galleries, checkboxes for different types of choices and so on. And we're going to cover quite a few of the different options in here throughout this particular video. However, for this example, we're going to keep this really simple, and we're going to go into text. If you want to apply instructions, so the end user, when they're adding a property, will have some instruction on how to use this particular field, you can drop that in there. You can also specify what fields are required. Now, because we're selling a property and it's already been built, it's in a location, it makes sense to have the location as a required field. So it has to be filled out. So we'll set that to be required. If you wanted to, you could put default values and so on and placeholder text. We don't need that at this point, so we're going to leave that as it is. Everything else is fine. We're going to add our second field in, and this is going to be our price field. So again, we're going to come in, name this field, we'll call it price. You can see when we click on field name, it automatically pre-fills that out. This time we're going to set this to be a number. So we're going to say we want to put a number in there, so it stops us putting anything other than numeric values in there. Again, we can set instructions. If we want to set this to required, which we're going to do, we'll say yes, we do. Placeholder text or prepend and append. We're not going to use any placeholder text, but we are going to put prepend in there, because we're going to say this is based upon the pound value. So that's saying that's going to be in there to start off with, so people can see exactly what they need to put in. Okay, next up, we're going to come down, add another field in there, and we're going to set this one to be tenure. So what we can do on here is we can choose various different options. If we wanted to, we could have this as a input value, or we could have it as something that you have to choose a specific value. For this example, we'll leave that to be set as text, and then we'll scroll down, add in our features field. Now this is going to be a little different. This is going to be a range of checkboxes. So we're going to say this is going to be the features. And this is basically the kinds of things that the house has to offer. Things like a garage, or various different things that it might have, off-street parking, sought after location, anything you think makes it relevant. You don't want them to have to type in time and time again. They can just choose the range of features that they want. Well, this makes it very easy. What we're going to do is we're going to change the field type this time. We're going to come down and we're going to say we want to use checkbox. Going to click on that. That'll open up some additional options. Again, we've got instructions required. We now have choices, allow custom and default value. So for this one, let's drop in instructions, and we're going to say, please choose all the relevant property features. Next up, we're going to put the choices in. Now you can see it tells you what you want to do. You've got how you input this information. You can put it in two ways. You can just put a single value in there, or you can put a value that you want to submit and a value you want to display. It's entirely up to you. If you want to go down that route, you simply separate each of the individual values and the display value by a full colon. As you can see in this example, we've got red, full colon, red. However, what we're going to do is keep it really simple. We don't want different values to be submitted anywhere else. We're just going to have this to choose the option you want and display it on the custom page we're going to create. So I've already copied some information. I'm going to drop that in there. So you can see we've got 5 different options. But if you want to add more in there and you want to come back and add more, you can do that easily. Where it says allow custom, this means do you want to allow people to insert their own values? If we say yes to that, you can see it says do you want to save the custom values as well as field choices? And again, if you say yes to that, we can now allow people to add more into this if they want to, and then it'll save it as part of the actual ongoing listings. For this example, we're going to say we don't want that to be available. We're going to keep it really straightforward, but if you want that, it is there for you. Next up, you've got the layout. Do you want this to be displayed vertically or horizontally inside the dashboard of WordPress? We'll leave this as vertical, that's perfectly fine. You then have the option to toggle. Now what this allows you to do is, do you want the ability to toggle all of these options on or off in one go? Well, that's kind of useful for a lot of people. So we'll say, yes, we'll put that on there and we'll leave that. And I'll show you what that looks like when we move on and take a look at this custom post type and when we've got the ACF fields included in it. Now, the final thing that we want to look at is the return value. Now, this depends upon how you set things up. The return value in our example is just value because that's what we have inside the choices. There's just a value. However, if you use this option for the red and the red, so you've got the value and you've got the label, you can specify either the value or the labels being used, or if you want to, that both will be an output as an array. Various different reasons why you want to use it. For us, we're going to leave that to be set to value. And we're going to come down now and create our next field. Add field. This time we're going to call this property gallery. And this then allows us to create a gallery of images for our particular property. So we can have a nice slider on there, whatever we want to do to display these images. So let's just scroll down and see some of the options we've got available for this particular kind of ACF field. Next, we just need to choose the gallery as the option for the type of field that we want. And like I say, this is the reason why you need to have ACF Pro, because gallery is part of the Pro package. So I'll choose gallery. That will now open up some options for us, and what we can do is we can choose what we want. We have 3 different options with the return format. In other words, how the information will be pulled in based upon how we set this up. You've got image array, which will have a string of all the different files. We've got image URL if you want to output just the full URL to that specific image, or we've got the image ID. For the way that we are working today, we want to set this to image array. We're going to say the preview size is 300 by 300, but if you want to, you can have that set to anything you like. Next up, we've got the option then for how we want to insert this, the library, and so on and so forth. Now, the library option is where and how do you want these images to be uploaded? We're going to use the normal WordPress media library, but what you can do is you can say all, which will display it as part of the entire library and allow you to actually upload it to the library and select images from the library, which is fine if you've got a small site. But if you've got a site that has potentially hundreds of entries and thousands of images, that can get very awkward and time consuming just to load those in. So what I tend to do is use upload to post. What this then does is it uploads the images and associates them with that particular post. When you create a new post or you open up the media library, you won't see these entries in there. Just makes life that a little bit easier. So once we've done that, we're going to scroll down and we're going to say what allowed file types do we want to use on here. Now this is great if you want to restrict the types of files that are going to be used. For our example, we just want to use the normal graphic file format, so we're going to drop in there JPEG, GIFs and PNGs. So that's that section done. Going to add another field in. This time we're going to have bedrooms. So we can specify exactly how many bedrooms are available in the property. We're going to choose number. We're going to say, yes, it's a required option because we're not saying anything other than properties where people can live in. Add another field in. And this time we're going to use garages. And we're going to use this to be a checkbox. So does it include a garage? Field name, there we go. So we're going to say checkbox. What we're going to do is we're going to set our values in there. So like we did before, we're going to come down to the choices option. We're going to drop in there yes and no. We're not going to allow custom because there's no other option we want to use. We'll leave it to layout for vertical and we'll say return value is going to be a value. So once we've done that, say add another field in. This time we're going to choose something a little different. So this time we're going to create number of cars as our custom field type. We're going to come down and we're going to set this to numeric. So nothing we haven't already done before. But what we are going to do is we're going to set some conditional logic available in here. Now you may be wondering what's conditional logic and what's the point in it? Well, let's just say we say yes on there. Now because we've set does it include a garage, yes or no, it kind of makes sense to say, well, if it includes a garage, how many cars can go in there? If it doesn't include a garage, then you're not going to ask me how many cars can go in there because it's not relevant. So we'll say yes to conditional logic, show this field if, and this is the condition we're going to set up. We're going to say if the garage has a value, well, we don't want that, that doesn't make sense. We want to say value is equal to, and then we've got yes or no, which are based upon the values that we've got associated inside our garage custom field. So it says if the garage has a value that's equal to yes, then pop this new field up and allow us to actually input the number of cars that can be stored inside that garage. So that's how we use conditional logic in a very, very basic format. But it's very useful when you're working with advanced custom fields if you want to create a custom post type or custom fields that have a little bit more logic in them, where if there's entries that are triggering something else, you can specify whether they display or not. So pretty cool. Okay, so there's all of our fields already set up ready for us. The next thing we need to do is say, where do we use these? What do we associate it with? Well, obviously, we want to associate this with our properties custom post type. So where it says post type is equal to, and currently says post, if we expand that out, you can see our custom post type of property is available inside there. So we'll say, and property. So only show these fields in the post type is equal to property. Then you've got a couple of options for the settings, and you can see we can come in and we can choose various different options inside there. So yes, we want this to be active. We're going to leave all those options available as they are. What we're also going to do is come down to the hide on screen. We don't want to show the permalink, the excerpt and so on. So what I'm going to do is I toggle all of these and then take off the ones that I don't want to disable. So we're going to say content editor we want to show, featured image and categories we want to show those. So we get rid of any of the clutter that's not really needed for our custom post type by disabling all of those options. Now we've done that, we're going to come back up to the top, and once we come up there, we're going to hit publish, and that's now created our custom fields, associated that with our properties. So let's jump into the property section now and take a look at all of the new information we have available. So we'll come in and say add new. And you can see we've got all the things we had before for the property title, the description, the property type, and the featured image. But now we have all of those options available based upon the custom fields that we've just set up. And you can see at the bottom, if we've got garage, we set that to yes. That will open up the number of cars. If it's disabled or we set that to no, it doesn't display at all. So it's very easy to have those to show up using that conditional logic. Okay, so now we've done the first thing. We've created our custom post type. We've created our custom fields and associated and linked everything together. Let's put some content in, and then we'll start building out the templates to create the layout for our properties. So before we move on and start creating the templates, let's just put some content into one of our properties so we've got something to work with. What we're going to do is we're going to create a nice 3-bedroom penthouse. And we'll drop in some information about it. We're going to say this is an apartment. Once we've done that, we're going to say we're going to set our featured image. I'm going to click on there. What we can do is now we can upload the files we want to work with. So I'm just going to choose some files that I've already downloaded, some basic images that we can use as a good example. And I'm just going to upload the ones that I want. So I'll take a couple of different images and we'll drop those and upload those to our lovely penthouse apartment. We'll set our featured image. That'll add that in there. We'll scroll down, we're going to drop in some location information now. So we put in the location, we're going to put a price of $500,000. Tenure is going to be freehold. Now what we're going to do is we're going to put in the various different features. So we're going to say this doesn't have a private rear garden because it's a penthouse. So we're going to say it has off-road parking, garage, and it's in a sought after location. Then we're going to come in and we're going to say we want to add images to our gallery. So we're going to choose these 3 that have been associated with this particular post. Now, as you can see, we're only seeing the images that have been uploaded to this particular property, and that's because we set it up when we set up ACF and the gallery field in there to upload it directly to the post. This is a good way, like I said at that point in the video, of just streamlining the process and only having the images that are associated with any particular property. Just works so much easier. So we'll select those, and you can see that now drops in our little thumbnails, our 300 by 300 thumbnails. Bedrooms, we're going to say there's 4 in here, and we're going to say Actually, let's say yes, there is a garage, and we'll say there's enough room in there for 2 cars. So there's all the details for our particular penthouse. We'll hit publish, and that'll give us some content now. So we've got our first created property. I'm going to pause the video, upload a couple more, and just have some content to work on when we start moving on in the next stage and creating the templates. So now there's our 3 properties already added in. So the next thing we're going to do is create the page that will display the first lot of properties that we have available. This is going to be a simple page. It's just going to have a filterable. In other words, we can choose apartments, flats, houses, and so on. And it'll filter out based upon whichever option we choose. This is going to be the really simple version. We'll take a look at the loop a little later after we've covered these basics. So what I'm going to do is come over to the pages, and we're going to say add new. And we're going to call this properties for sale. Okay, we'll just publish this page, and then we'll just choose to edit with Elementor, and we're going to start creating things. So there we go. There's our basic page layout. Headers and footers are already in place. Let's get rid of that page title. We don't want that. So we're going to come down to the settings section and hide the title. So that'll hide it on this particular page. Next up, we're going to come in and we're going to create the header section. Now I've already gone ahead and created something, so I'm just going to simply paste that in here. So like I say, this is just simply a case of a header graphic, some text, nothing more than that. So next up, we want to create the area where we can go through and list the properties. We're going to use a portfolio grid for this. I'm going to click to add, going to add in a single row column. We're going to set the column gap to be no gap, so we can have this filling out exactly what we want. And then we're going to come into the options to choose our widgets. I'm going to come down and underneath the pro section, we're going to choose portfolio. Drag and drop that into the relevant area. Once we've done that, we can now go through and choose what we want to display in here. Now at the moment, you can see it's saying columns 3, posts per page 6, and so on. What we want to do is come down first of all to the query section and choose what we want to include in here. Now at the moment it's displaying nothing because it's set to show posts, and we have no content in the posts. What we do have though is a custom post type called properties. We choose that. There we go. There's our first range of properties, the 3 we've currently gone in and added in. So there's a couple of things we want to do now. We want to go through and set up the styling and make sure that everything looks as good as it can do. And we also want to enable the filter bar. So let's just come to the filter bar section and say show. And what that's going to do is it's going to allow us to choose what taxonomy we want to use to filter these particular sections, these images. So we're going to come in and say property types, which is our custom taxonomy. And there we go. All apartment, flat, and house. So we've already set up the basics. Now let's go through and choose a couple other things. Come back to the layout. At the moment, the images look a little bit dodgy. They don't look great. It's because we're using a very low resolution version. So we're going to come to image size. We're going to choose to have the medium large, and you should see then that that updates. We get a much better looking range of images. We can also adjust the image ratio if we want to, so we can change that to get exactly what we want, the look and feel that we're happy with. I'm going to leave that to its default of 0.66. We can choose how many we want to display per page, so you can up this to whatever you want. I'm going to leave that at 6 because we only have 3 entries at this point in time anyway. Next up, we can come over to the style section and we can adjust things like column gaps and rows. So let's just set those to have values of 10. We'll do the same for the row gap, even though we only have 1 row in there. If we want to apply borders, we can do that. We can adjust and fine tune the image overlays if we want to. I don't really like this look at the moment. Let's just say we're going to set this to be black. We're going to have it semi-transparent. And let's just take a look. That already looks better. Typography, we're going to come in there, we're going to choose a lighter font. There we go, that's looking pretty nice, I like that. The filter bar, we're going to do the same thing again. We change the typography and we're going to set that to be a little lighter, just so it all looks a little bit neater and cooler. Transform, we'll say, we'll have that as uppercase, so it kind of gives it a little bit more weight. Let's make that 4, there we go. Okay, so there's the basics. We've got that all set up, and now we've got a very easy filterable way of viewing the properties we have available. So we click on apartment, you can see it now filters that out to show only the apartments, houses, flats, or everything. So a pretty cool and easy way and a very visual way of working to display things. So let's hit update on there, and then we'll preview our page to see what's going on. So we preview it, you can see everything is looking the way it should do. We need to put a little bit of spacing at the bottom of this, which we'll do in a moment. However, if we click on any of these properties, we now go over to a pretty basically formatted page. So we need to go ahead and adjust that to make sure this looks the way that we want it to. So let's come back out of this preview. Let's just drop a little bit of padding into this particular section just to make sure it all looks nice and neat and tidy. So we've got 50 at the top, 50 at the bottom, update that, and we are good to go. So there's our first page created. We can come out of this now and we can exit to our dashboard, and the next thing we're going to do is go through and create the template that's going to be for the individual property listing. To do that, we come to the template section for Elementor, and we're going to come into the theme builder section. Theme builder, you can see I've already got up my default header and footer. We've got an entry inside here that says loop, and if you've worked with Elementor Pro before, you'll never have seen this before in there, because this is part of that Ele custom skin. This is what we wanted for, and like I say, in the next section we'll see how we can leverage the power of that. For now, just knowing it's there is pretty useful. So what we're going to do is create a new single post type. So we're going to click on single, add new single, you can see we can choose from there, which is fine. Single is exactly what we want. Select the post type. This time we want to choose property, because again, this is the custom post type just to list out a single property. So we're going to click on that. I'm going to call this default single property. Always good habit to get into naming things that make sense. I always put default if it's something that's going to be used globally for a particular section. I'll put single or archive depending upon the kind of thing that I'm working on. And then property, which is basically what is the post type that we're targeting. So it makes sense to me. Create our template. That'll take us over now into Elementor itself, and you can see we can go through it. We have no template saved or anything on there, so we're just going to bypass out of this, and you can see we're now into the normal editor, a normal page layout, and we can start creating our custom layout. Now, because the images of the property we're looking to sell have the most visual impact, I want to make that the first thing that you see when you land on a particular property page. So what we're going to do is we're going to come in and we're going to add in a single row column. This is going to have our hero image placed into it. So we're going to leave the padding and everything as is, and any sort of column gaps, that's all perfectly fine. What we are going to do is we're going to choose it. We're going to come up to the Styles tab on the left-hand side, and underneath the background, we're going to choose Classic as the background type. From there, we're not going to choose an image, we're going to choose the dynamic option. Do that, and we're going to choose Featured Image. So we're going to choose that. We're going to set up the options then for how we want this to display. So position, we're going to set this to be sent to center. Attachment, we can leave as is, or we can set it to fixed or scroll, whatever you want to work with. We're going to say repeat is going to be no repeat, and size is going to be cover. You can see that now shows us a bit of the image, but doesn't look particularly great. Next thing we want to do is come up to the background overlay, choose a background overlay type, and we're going to choose a color inside there. We're going to set that to black, and for now, 0.5 is fine for the opacity. Like I say, at the moment, we can't really see anything in this, so we need to go in and start styling and adding content in. So the first thing we're going to do is add in the title of the post. For this example, it's our custom post type, so it's the name of the property. Drag and drop that into there, and you can see that now pulls in an example. So at the moment, it's showing one of our properties. If we want to choose a different one, we can simply come into the settings section under the preview. Property is perfectly fine, and we can do is we can get rid of this, and we could say, let's say we want the penthouse. So I'll start typing in, there's the 3-bedroom penthouse, click on there, apply and preview. Once we do that, it'll update, and there's our 3-bedroom penthouse, and as you can see, the image in the background has changed, and any other information will also change on there. So there's the first piece of information. Next thing we're going to do is we're going to drop in a simple divider just to separate the title, and we're going to style all these a little bit later. We're going to put just basic content in to start off with. The next thing we want to put in is the price. So we're going to come down, we're going to choose a heading for this, we're going to drag and drop that into place, and we're going to pre-fill out some information. Now at the moment it says add your heading here. We want dynamic information, so we're going to click on dynamic. We're going to scroll down to the bottom and we see ACF fields. We're going to choose the ACF field option. Then you see this little wrench icon next to it. We're going to click on there, and that'll allow us to choose what field we want to target from our advanced custom fields. So for this example, we want to use price. Then we're going to open up the advanced section, and we're going to put in the information that's going to sit before this price. So we're going to say that we want this to be property price, full colon, and then the pound sign. So what that'll do is that'll prepend that information on there for us. So we've now got what we want displayed. Next up, we're going to come back out, and we're going to say we want to put the post info underneath this, and all we're going to reference from the post info is the date that this was particularly added to the particular listing. So we're going to get rid of author, we're going to get rid of time, we're going to get rid of comments. We just want to have date in there. So there's our basic information, but at the moment it all looks a little bit poor. We now need to go through and style that to make it look a lot better. So let's start that off by just adding a little bit of extra space around this area. So we're going to unlink the padding and we're going to set 250 pixels top, 250 pixels bottom, and that opens up and allows us to see that hero image at the top of our design. So it already looks better. Next up, we want to style this text because at the moment it looks pretty poor. So let's just choose our heading first of all. H1 is perfectly fine for that. We'll center align it to make it look a lot better. Come into the style section, we'll set the text color to be white so it stands off the background. Once we've done that, we'll come in and style the typography. So we'll just set this to be 300. We'll bump the size up. Don't want to go too crazy with this because obviously we don't know how long the listing's going to be. So we'll set it to something like that. Actually, let's set that to 200, make it a little bit thinner. There we go. So you can see we can fine tune and tweak this to get exactly what we want, how we want it to look. So there's the first part. Next thing, I want to make sure that stands out a little bit better from the background. So we're going to put a solid or semi-transparent background to this. So we can do that very easily. What we can do is come over to the advanced section, come over to background. Inside there, we can choose a background color. We'll set that to be black. We'll adjust the opacity slightly on there so we can still see through it a little bit and let the underlying content show through. And what we can do now is we can come into advanced and we can set some padding around this. Let's just say we want to put something like 30 pixels of padding. That looks pretty good. So now our heading stands off the background, but still allows us to see the image that's behind it. So next up, we're going to come in and choose our line. We're going to center that. We're going to set the width of this to be something like about 10%, something along those lines, 15%. That looks okay. We'll set that to be white and we'll set the style to be dotted. So we now have just that little separator there. We're going to come in and we're going to choose this price information and we do the same again. So we're going to come through, we're going to choose a color of white. Once we've chosen the color, we're going to adjust the typography on this. We'll set this to be 200. Actually, no, we will go 300 just so it stands off a little bit better. And we'll adjust the sizing on there as well, just to make sure it looks good so they can see what the price of this particular property is. And the final thing we have to do is set the information under the date that this was added. So we're going to come into the style, set this to be centered. We're going to choose the icon, set that to be white. We'll leave the icon as it is, and we'll do the same for the text, set that to be white. And there we go. We can change the typography and we'll set that to be 200 as well. Actually, no, let's set that to 400 so it stands off a little bit better. There we go. So we've set up the basics now of the style of our heading. So everything is now in place. So we've got the first part of this done, all pulling in dynamic data. So everything we've created so far is pulling in information from either the page title or from the custom fields that we've created. So the next thing we're going to do now is put in a sort of an iconic list of the key features this property has available to it. Okay, so what we need to do is create another section. We're going to choose a 1 row, 1 column. So that's the first thing in place. Next, we're going to start styling this out because we want to have 5 different icons inside here. Things like the price, the freehold or the tenure, how many cars can go in the garage, the bedrooms, the location, and so on. It just makes it something that's very quick and easy at the top of the page that people can see. And if they want to look further, they can look at more information about this particular property below. So how do we go about doing that? Well, again, with Elementor, it's pretty easy. The first thing I want to do is make sure this overlaps with the area above. Now, based upon the screen resolution you look at the moment, you can't really see this, but I'll show you what it looks like properly when I get rid of the left-hand bar. So the first thing I want to do is select this row and column, come to the advanced section. What we're going to do is unlink the margin. We're going to set a value of 100 pixels and set that to minus afterwards, so that sits above, and you can see that now pushes that up over the image. We're going to set a value of 100 at the bottom to make sure that anything that comes below it is sitting below the image, so we don't get things butting up and looking a little bit strange and horrible. Next thing we need to do is make sure our Z index is set to 999 for this example, because I want to make sure this sits on top of everything. So there's the first thing. Next thing is we need to go through and start putting some content in there, and then we can style the various different elements. Okay, so let's start styling things and getting everything ready. We're going to choose to edit the column. We're going to click on that. What we're going to do is we're going to come to the advanced section and we're going to put some padding inside here. So we're going to set 30 pixels all the way around. Once you've done that, we're going to come over and we're going to jump into the style section, come down into our background type, make sure that's set to be white. Okay, so with that in place, we're going to come over now and we're going to choose to put it in a section inside there. Drop that in there, you can see that now picks the colors up the way we wanted it to. Because there's nothing in there, no content in there, Elementor won't necessarily show you anything inside the background color or image and so on you set as a background for a particular row stroke column. Okay, so there's the basics. We need to now put in an additional couple of columns. So we're going to right click and we're going to say add column. Do the same again until we've got 5 columns in there. So there we go. There's our 5 columns set up. Just going to select this parent column again now, and we're going to make sure that our layout is set to be middle and center to make sure everything sits horizontally and vertically centered inside this parent element. So there's the basics of this. Next thing we need to do now is just give it a little bit of a drop shadow. Now making sure that we've got the parent column selected, not any of the columns inside this inserted inner section. We can make sure that's selected. We're going to come to the style tab, and inside the style tab we're going to come to the border. We're going to set a border radius of 5 pixels just to give a little bit of a rounded edge. I'm going to come to the box shadow, and we're going to apply a shadow in there. So at the moment you can see the shadows there, but it's a little bit too strong, so I'm going to drop that down so it's fairly low, and then we're going to adjust the blur on this to about 20, and we're going to set the spread to about 7 or 8, somewhere around there. Okay, that looks pretty good. I like that. So there's the container. We can now drop in the relevant elements and pull in the ACF data. So what we're going to do is we're going to put a couple of icons in. All we need to do, come over, we're going to search for icon. There's the icon that we want. We're going to simply drag and drop that into the first section, and then we're going to, first of all, give it some color, making sure it's centralized. View, everything else is all fine. We're going to come into style. Primary color, we're going to set to be a reddish color. So I'm going to choose that. There we go. I'm going to copy that value so I've got that value available to me no matter what. Okay, so there's the color and everything else. Come back over, we're going to change this now to something that's more relevant. So we're going to choose building, and we'll choose this option, and there we go. So there's our first icon in there. Next up, come back to the widgets, and we're going to choose the heading again, drag and drop that underneath. H2 is fine, we'll set that to be centered. What we're going to do now is choose some dynamic data. So we're going to click, scroll down to the bottom and choose ACF fields like we did previously, then click on the wrench. We're going to open up and we're going to say we're going to choose the tenure. Open up the advanced section, and what we can do in here now is we can adjust what comes before this. So what we're going to do is we're going to put in strong, we're going to put in tenure, full colon, then we're going to put strong, close that out. And what that'll do is that will put the tenure before it, and then we can see we've got freehold, but it'll also make it bold so it'll look a little bit better. So there's the basic information in there. Now we just quickly need to go and style that. So we jump over to the style section, set the color on this to be a dark gray, change the typography. We'll say we want this to be 200, for example, and we'll adjust the size on there to something like that. Actually, just make it 300 so it stands out a little bit better. And we'll set it to 14. So there's our first icon and our first piece of information. So what we can do now is we can duplicate this. So we can just say duplicate, drag that over there, duplicate this one, drag that over to the next section, and then we can change that. So we can change the icon from this, and we'll just change that to something like money. There we go, we'll choose money. And we'll change this information now in the second section, and we'll come back in and we'll choose the little cog icon. We'll change that from tenure and we'll put in price. Come down to advanced, we'll change tenure out of there, and we'll just put in price inside our strong brackets or our strong code. At the end of that, we'll just put the pound sign in, so it'll precede that correctly. So there we go, there's our price, there's our tenure. I'm quickly going to go through now and just do this again for 3 additional sections, and then we'll carry on from there. So now that I've resized those and set up all the relevant data, I just want to put some separators either side of each of these different elements just to separate them out and visually separate them on screen. So we're going to choose this particular column. We're going to come over to the style section, going to come on the border, and what we're going to do is we're going to set this to have a dotted border. We're going to set this to be fairly light grey, and we're going to set this, for example, to be on the right hand side. So unlink these and say 1 pixel on the right hand side. So with that set, what I can do is I can now right click on this column, I can say copy, and then I can come over to the next column, I can say paste style, paste style, paste style. So now you can see we've got that little separator in between each of those different columns. So there's our section at the top, all laid out, all controlled via ACF. So we're now ready to move on and start putting the actual main content into our design. First thing we want to do is come in and create a new section. This time we're going to choose a 70-30 column layout. In the left hand side of this, we're going to have the main information and a gallery of images, and on the right hand side we've got some key information, a share option for social media, and a map of the location of where this particular property is. So first things first, let's drop in that gallery of images. For this, we're going to come over and we're going to choose to put a carousel in. Before we do that, let's just choose this particular section we just added and make sure that there's no column gaps on this, so we can control exactly what spacing we have. So we can say no gap on there, and that's that all sorted. Come back onto our widgets and we're going to search for carousel. And we're going to use this image carousel. So we're going to drag and drop that into our design. Once we've done that, we've got the option now to add in dynamic data. So we're going to choose the dynamic option. I'm going to click on there. You can see this filters out and only shows us anywhere that has information to do with images. We want to choose the ACF gallery field because that's what we've set up as part of our custom post type. Let's click on that. You can see that now as that in there, nothing happens because we haven't chosen exactly where we want to pull that from. We may have multiple gallery fields inside our custom post type. So again, we click on the little wrench icon, choose the key, and this time we choose property gallery, which is the gallery we want to work with. Once you do that, you'll see that pulls in the information and put some basic styling in there, which we can now control. So once that's done, we can now come through and we can set up how we want this to look. So let's just change this over to a larger thumbnail version. Slides to show, we're going to set that to be 2. Do we want the slides to automatically scroll? We'll see, yes, that's perfectly fine. We want no image stretching, and we want to change this to just show the arrows. Link, we're going to choose media file. Lightbox, we're going to leave as default because, as normal, whenever you install Elementor, it'll create a lightbox option on there. So if you turn that off, you can specify it shows it just directly inside this particular carousel. We're going to leave it as default. Caption, we're going to leave that as is. We're going to jump to the style section now, and we're going to adjust a few things on here. So first thing we want to do is make sure that the image looks good. At the moment, they're all kind of butted up a little bit close to each other. I don't really like that. So we're going to add in some spacing on there. So we're going to say we want the spacing to be custom, and that allows us to add in custom spacing if we want to. We'll leave it to 20. That looks perfectly fine. Next, we're going to add in another heading. So we're going to come over, drop in a heading in there. H2 is perfectly fine for this, and the text we're going to drop in is going to be property details. Underneath that, we're just going to put a nice little separator divider just so we can have a little bit of separation there, and we'll adjust and control and how these look a little later. Final thing we want to put on this side is going to be the actual post content. In other words, the description about our particular property. So we'll drag the post content in, drop that underneath there, and that'll pull in the relevant information. So there's the first part of this page laid out. Next thing we want to do is concentrate on the right hand side, and the first thing we're going to add in there is our Google map. So we're going to drag that widget over, drop that on the right hand side. Once that's in there, you can see that pulls in a default location. We're going to change that by using the dynamic option. Going to come down to our ACF fields, click on the little wrench icon, and we're going to change that to be location. We'll see then that the map updates and shows us exactly what we want, which is the location of this particular property. Okay, so that's that section in there. The next thing we're going to do is put the property features. So we're going to come down, we're going to choose text editor, drop that below our map. Again, we're going to use the dynamic options. We're going to click on dynamic, scroll down to the bottom, choose ACF field, expand that out, and we're going to choose features. Open up the advanced section, and we're going to do like we've done before. We're going to put in strong, so we can have this in bold. We're going to put in the words property features, full colon and a space, and we're just going to close out that strong. So the nice thing with this is you can use HTML properties in here to make sure you style everything to look better. So you can see having property features in bold at the beginning just separates it from the actual list of features on this particular property. Okay, so once we've done that, the next thing we want to do is we're going to duplicate that because we're going to do the same kind of thing again. So we'll just say duplicate. This time we're going to change that information. We're going to have the tenure instead of features. Change that, come into the advanced section, and we're going to change out where it says property features to tenure. There we go. And that updates accordingly. So that's looking pretty good. We're going to duplicate this heading, and we're going to use that then to make sure we've got the same font style and everything else going on in this section. So we're going to do the same with the line. We're going to duplicate that, move that and drop that in there. And finally, we're going to come over and we're going to choose share. And grab those share buttons and drop those in there. Okay, so there's the basics of our page all set up. So the next thing we need to do is style this out before we take a look at testing it to see how everything works. And working with styling inside Elementor is pretty easy. First thing we're going to do is we're going to change some of the way this is laid out. First thing I want to do is I want to make this sit a little bit further up and change the background color. So I'm going to choose this particular block, and we're going to come up to the style section. We're going to come down to our background. We're going to set our background color to be a very, very, very pale gray. The problem with that is you can see that ends there and we've got this white block above it, which doesn't look very good. So what we need to do is adjust some padding and some margins and so on to make sure everything sits the way we want it to. So to do that, again, we make sure we've got this particular element selected. We're going to come over to the advanced section and we're going to come to our margins and our padding. First thing, unlink both of them so we can control each different element independently. Then we're going to set our top margin first of all. So we're going to set the first margin value to -175. The bottom is perfectly fine. Then what we're going to do is, you can see now everything is butting up a little bit too close. So the next thing we need to do is come to the padding for this section. And in there, we're going to set a padding of 150 pixels. And at the bottom, we're going to set 50 just so we can separate this out from the footer. And now you can see everything sits and looks nice and neat and tidy. So the next thing we need to focus on now is sorting out the alignment and the spacing inside these various different columns. So it's very easy to do. We can control these things in a very quick and simple fashion. Let's choose this first block first of all. So we're going to choose this left-hand column. Once we've done that, again, over to the advanced section, and what we can do now is unlink these and we can apply some padding over on the right-hand side. So on the right, we're going to set, let's try 30 pixels. Yep, that looks pretty good. We'll now select this right-hand column. We'll do the same thing on there, advanced, unlink. This time we're going to set it on the left hand side. So again, 30 pixels on the left. You can see now everything sits nice and neat. Finally, we're going to come in and we're going to choose this, make sure we've got that active. We're going to come down to the style section, into border, and what we're going to do is we're going to say we want to have a border of dotted. We're going to set that to a fairly pale gray, and we're going to set this to be 1 pixel on the left hand side. So what that'll do is that'll put a nice little separator line between these two columns. Okay, so there's the basics. Next up, let's start controlling the way that the content looks inside these various different elements. So we're going to choose this first block, our little carousel. We're going to click on that. We're going to come over and we're going to go into the advanced section. We're going to put 30 pixels of padding all the way around that. And then we're going to come in and we're going to say we want to have the background color, and we're going to set our background color to be white. So we can have a nice block around that. Once that's done, we're going to come down into our border section, choose a box shadow, and we're going to apply a box shadow. So you can see it applies it straight away. We want to make this a lot more subtle, so we're going to drag that down so it's just a little hint of being raised off the page. Okay, so there we go. There's the first one done. Now I don't need to do that again and again and again. All I need to do is right click on this, choose copy, and we can come down to our body content and we can right click and we can say paste style. That'll pick up that styling straight away, and we can do exactly the same then for our map. We can right click, we can say paste style, and you can see that now pulls in the styling and everything looks consistent throughout. So that's a quick time saver. Next up, let's just style the actual headings a second. So again, what we can do is we come to style, we can change the text color, which we're going to set to this dark gray. Typography, we're going to set to be, we'll try 300. Yeah, that looks pretty good. Size is fine. And we'll say we'll do the same thing now with this. We're going to specify we want this to have a weight of 2. I'm going to change the color on there. We're going to choose a reddish color that kind of ties in with our icons at the top. And we'll just adjust this to about 15%. There we go. Set that to be left aligned. Actually, let's set that to be 3 pixels. There we go. That looks pretty good. Okay, so we've done that. What we need to do now is select this, copy, right click, paste style. Copy, right click, paste style. So there we go. So it's very quick and easy. Now I'm going to go through those final couple of things that I want to style on here, and then I'll come back and we'll take a look at this page in action with it all styled and ready to go. Before we can test this, we've got to come in and set the condition for when this template is going to be used. So I've come in and saved the page. This allows us to add our condition in. So we're going to say add condition. We're going to say we want to use this on properties. And we're going to say all. So in other words, any property in the single page type is going to use this template. So we've done that. We'll say save and close. That's now created that template and applied it to our property single post type. So let's take a look at this in action. So here's our index, and you can see there's our properties. If we want to filter those, we can filter those out. And let's just say we want to take a look at this modern studio flat. That now takes us over into our newly designed template. You can see everything is laid out and styled the way we've set it up. Got a section at the top that has the key features. We've got our gallery, we've got our location, property details, description. All those kinds of things are now laid out inside our design. So we've created our custom listing page. We've created a very simple sort of portfolio page of all the properties. The final stage is to take a look at how we can create our own custom loop. So I've come back into the theme builder now for Elementor, and we're going to take a look at adding our own loop in. So we click on loop, and we'll say add new loop. So you can see it pulls up, it's going to be a loop, and then we can just add in a name. So we're going to call this one property listing loop. Create our template, and that'll take us into Elementor as you expect. Now we don't have any templates set up, so we can simply close out of this. That'll take us now into our preview of our page. So what we're going to do is we're going to click to add a new widget. We're going to set this to be a simple 1 row, 1 column. Now, the way to look at this is forget the header, forget the footer, forget the width of this and everything. Just consider this to be how you want to basically display the contents of one of those loop entries. So when you're working with WordPress, you're normally used to seeing different posts, either sort of like single one above the other or 2 or 3 side by side and so on. We're creating one entry of that. Hope that makes sense, and stick with me because it'll make sense once you see when we start to use this inside the actual page display itself. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to just put in the content we want to work with. So we're going to come over to the widget section on the left hand side, and inside there we're going to drop in some basic info. So the first thing we want to do is drop in an image. So we're going to say drop that image in there. We're going to choose dynamic, and we're going to choose featured image. Now, even though we don't have anything associated with this just yet, we are linking it through to the featured image of a post, because that's what it's going to do. It's going to display the post loop. And we can take a look at what content is going to be in there by using the options in the settings section. So we come into settings, come to the preview settings, and what we're going to do is we're going to open this out, choose property from the listings, and then from there we're going to choose one of our properties. So we'll say we want the penthouse, doesn't really matter which one, and we'll click OK on there, and then we say apply and preview. And what you'll find now is that'll pull in the information from that particular post, so we can use that as a preview. So our custom post type is being used as a preview. Okay, so there's the image. That's perfectly fine. Now, obviously, that might be a little on the large side, so we're going to come in there. We're going to say we want to set this to the medium large. If it isn't too big, we'll set that to be centered. Next up, we're going to come in and we're going to choose to put a heading underneath that. The heading, again, choose dynamic. We're going to choose post title. Like I say, even though this might kind of seem a little counterintuitive because we're not working with posts, we're working with a custom post type. How's it going to know? Well, because WordPress kind of treats all these post titles and stuff as equal across the board. Just because we've created a custom post type, it's still a post. Hope that makes sense. So we can, if we want to, come in and style that, but I'm not going to worry too much about that. What we are going to do is we just put 2 other blocks of information underneath. So we're going to come in, we're going to say we're going to put a text editor. And we're in there, we're going to choose dynamic, and we're going to come down to our ACF fields, expand that out. Then we're going to open up with a wrench icon, and we're going to say location. And again, we'll do the same thing in there. So we'll put in strong location, colon, close out our bold. We'll copy that then so we can use that again. So there you go, there's location Cardiff. What we'll do now is we'll just duplicate that, and we'll just change the date that's going to be displayed in there. So we'll expand that out. And this time we'll change this to be price. We'll change this out and we'll put that in there, and we'll put the space and the pound sign. So there we go. Change that from location to price. Okay, so there's the basics. Now, I'm not going to worry too much about how we style this. I just want to demonstrate how we use it. So there we go. There's our first loop. Click on publish. Add a condition in there. So we're going to click on add condition, and we're going to say this applies to, we say entire site. We say save and close. So once we've done that, we've created the instance of one entry in our loop. Now we need to create a page and insert that loop into it. So we'll come back out of this, exit to our dashboard. We're going to come up to pages, and we're going to say add new. And in here, we're going to say properties. We'll publish that. And once we've done that, we'll edit with Elementor. Once we open the Elementor editor, we're going to come in, we're going to get rid of that title from this. We're going to hide the page title, and we're going to come back to our widgets. And we're going to come down, we're going to choose posts. So we're going to drag and drop the posts in. Now, if you ever work with the post widgets, this is going to look pretty familiar to you. But we've got some extra controls. So first thing I want to do is just select this, put a bit of space above and below it. So we'll unlink the padding, 50 above, 50 below. Okay, so we're getting there. Let's scroll down and we can go to query. And under query, currently it says posts. And the reason we're seeing nothing is because we have no posts. Let's change that over to properties, and you'll see that'll pull in our properties. But it's just pulled it in with the default styling. So we can override that. If you come back into the layout section, you can see you've got skin. Now normally you have classic and you have cards. We now have custom, which is part of the Ellie custom skins. So we choose custom from there. You can see what that'll do is now it says, please select the loop you want to use. So it opens up a new option for select a template. Click on there and we can say property listing loop, which is what we've just created. And there's our custom loop, which we can go in and control the number of columns, the number of posts per page, so we can control that. We can also put pagination in, so when we have a lot more properties, we want people to be able to go through to the next page and the next page and so on. Well, we can do that very easily. We can add in various different formats of pagination, previous, next, numbers and so on. So we can add that in there. Now nothing will show because we currently have only 3 on display and we only have 3 listed, so that's perfectly fine. But you can see that's very easy. So we update this page now. I'm not going to really say about styling this and everything. It's more a case of just a demonstration. So now what we can do is let's just click and preview the changes on that. So there's our custom listing. Now the problem we've got is we can't click on anything. So how do we access anything on here? Well, that's very easy. Just jump back in, and what I want to do is show you how you can easily make changes. We're going to come out of this. What we're going to do is we're going to come back into our template section, back into the theme builder, go into loop, and we're going to open up our property listing loop. So we're going to edit that in Elementor. Once we're inside there, we can easily come in and make changes. So let's just click on this image. You can see at the moment link is set to none. So let's just change that and we'll say custom URL. Then we can say dynamic and we can say post URL. So that now links it to the link for that particular post. If we come in and we just change the style of this text, for example, so we'll just say we want the typography on there to be like we've done before. We'll set that to thinner. We'll come in and we'll just say we want that to be a particular color. All the kind of things we could normally do. We'll update this. And now if we just jump back into our test section, refresh this, you can see those changes are taking effect on all of the different entries because we've just styled the actual individual entry item, the individual loop item. This is just repeating that over and over again. So you can see the power of this comes in, how easy it is to work with and create these custom loops. So now if we click on one of our entries, we can simply click and that'll take us through and show us that property for sale with a nice template that we've created. Now, if you've enjoyed what we've covered in this video, I'd recommend taking a look at the playlist you can see in the top right-hand corner now, and it'll also be linked in the description below. It's going to take you through a lot more things done with ACF and some of the other plugins we've covered, really get you up to speed with the kinds of things that you can create using ACF and WordPress alongside Elementor Pro. Now, if you did enjoy the video, please consider subscribing so you can be kept up to date every time we release videos every Tuesday and Friday. Going to get you up to speed with getting more out of WordPress quickly and easily. As always, if you enjoyed the video, give it a thumbs up. If you didn't, give it a thumbs down. That's perfectly fine. As always, I'd love to get your feedback on what we've covered in this video and what you'd like to see in future videos on advanced custom fields in WordPress. Drop your comments in the comment section below and let's get that conversation started. Now in the description, you'll see links to everything covered in this video and also some affiliate links. So if you want to purchase anything we cover on this channel, you can use those links. It costs you no more money, but it does give a small percentage back to the channel and helps support what we do around here. As always, my name is Paul C. This has been WP Tuts, and until next time, take care.